Hello y'all, and welcome to YoungFolkKnits. Today we're going to crochet and knit an Agnes vest. Hello y'all, and welcome back to YoungFolkKnits. If you're new here, my name is Casey, and on this channel I share all about my love for fiber arts. Today I'm going to be starting a new project. I am testing the Agnes sweater vest for Bethany Lynn Makes on Instagram, and this is a pattern that is actually a little bit of a deviation from what I normally do, which is focusing on knitting. This pattern utilizes crochet to create the body of the sweater, which is made up of granny squares. You then take those granny squares and connect them, pick up stitches, and knit ribbing on both the armholes, the hem, and the collar of the vest. Bethany has had this as a free pattern on Ravelry for a while, but she is now making it more size inclusive, whereas previously it was more of just a tutorial on how to make one size. It's now going to include multiple sizes, starting at size extra small and I believe going to a size 5XL. I'm going to be testing the size extra large, and I think what's really cool is that you can increase and decrease the size of your finished object by actually making the size of each granny square bigger or smaller. Now, I had started an Ariana cardigan, which is a free pattern by Amy Christophers, and it is another one of those that includes both crochet, which you use to make the granny squares, and then knitting, which you use to do the ribbing and the finishing. I just never finished it. I never got much steam working on it because I was always busy doing something else. And so I thought whenever this pattern popped up, even though it was a worsted weight pattern, I had all of this yarn from my Ariana cardigan, which is Biches, lambswool. So this is the heavy DK light worsted weight yarn. And it is a woolen spun, really lovely, just very woolly, rustic style yarn. It blooms beautifully when you block it, and it just really has that classic woolen, rusty yarn feel to it. I decided to rip out the few granny squares that I had because I had done all of them in the same color, and the granny square that I'm using for the sweater vest actually needs an extra round, and that round needed to be in a different color from the border. So I know that probably doesn't make any sense. All of that to say, I ripped out the granny squares that I had and I started over. But I did have some really lovely colors. I had a mustard, a rust, a gray, a peach. Let me see what else I've got in here. Now this is a fingering weight, Biches Le Petite lambswool, and I'm holding it double in a really pretty navy blue color. I also have this sea green, and for my main color, I'm using this gold brown, which is my favorite of all the colors I've got. I think this mauve and this green are just absolutely beautiful together. So I'm very, very happy with the colors I have. So I have crocheted up a granny square using some of my favorites from the colors I had, and I think it looks really great. I hope that it's not too dark and you can see that. Now the pattern calls for a 4.5mm crochet hook, but I am a very loose knitter and a very loose crocheter due to the way that I tension my yarn. And because of that, and because of the fact that I'm using a DK weight yarn, I went down to a 4mm crochet hook. And I am very happy with the gauge on this. I need to block this just slightly, and I will be able to block it out to the size I need for each square to be. I need to make 25 of these right here. And they don't take me very long to make. If I was knitting this square, it would take me longer than it does to crochet this. But I need to make 25 of them. Once I have my 25 squares, I will whip stitch them together in a particular order. And then I'll add some crocheted rows in between the rows of granny squares to make it the correct width. That's all done before I actually even pick up and start knitting the ribbing. So I still have a fair bit in front of me, but I think this is going to be extremely cute, and it's just going to make me very happy to wear. It's some of my absolute favorite colors in the world, and I am a granny square lover. So this is going to be great. I actually learned how to crochet before I learned how to knit. I learned to crochet when I was a very young child, but I never took crochet as far as I did knitting. I did crochet some garments, and I crocheted a lot of hats and scarves, and I never did any complicated stitches with crochet like I have done with knitting. I have tried to take knitting as far with it as I can because I love all of the complicated things with knitting. I just don't feel as proficient with crochet. Sometimes I'm not even sure where I'm supposed to put my crochet hook. You know, whenever it says inserted into the top of this stitch, I get confused. What exactly is the top of this stitch? It doesn't feel as straightforward to me as it does with knitting. Very thankfully, I have had help from the sponsor of today's video, which is Skillshare. Skillshare is actually the largest online learning community for creatives like us. It has such a wide breadth and depth of topics that whatever your interest is, you can find a class on Skillshare. Knitting is my first love and has had so much of my focus, but there are so many other things I would like to become proficient in, and one of them is crochet. I have to say, I thoroughly enjoyed the class, Learn to Crochet Granny Squares. This class not only helps you to master that classic crochet technique, but in the end you get a bag out of this class because you work through an entire project. It's perfect for beginners who really want to dive into crochet, and even those with a little bit of experience who want to expand their skills with it. If you want to make the Agnes sweater vest or the Ariana cardigan, I think it's perfect because it covers the basics of granny square construction, how to incorporate color changes, and assembly techniques, all of which are perfect to help you have a smooth project. The great thing about Skillshare though is that whatever your interest is, whether it's film and video, illustration, design, photography, creative writing, knitting, painting, crochet, there will be a class for you, along with talented instructors and an amazing community. That's why I'm thrilled to partner again this month with Skillshare. The first 500 people to use the link in my description will receive a 1-month free trial, so choose your topic and you can get started today. Thanks again, Skillshare. Now that I have my granny square technique mastered, I use the term mastered very loosely, I'm ready to get started on this project. I'm going to be using a crochet hook that I got a few years ago from Knit Brooks, which is a husband and wife team in Canada. They hand make these beautiful wooden crochet hooks with intricate designs like chevron and geometric shapes, all in different kinds of wood. They're so beautiful. So this is my 4mm hook, which worked out absolutely perfect, and I like it because when I crochet, I tend to twist my arm and wrist in a way that I do not with knitting. Megan and I were talking about this. She has the same issue, and it causes a lot of pain in my hand, in my wrist, and all up and down my forearm here. The crochet hook I use helps a lot. If the crochet hook ends right here in the middle of my hand It causes extra pain actually here in the bed of my hand, whatever that's called. I don't know, the palm of my hand. Where's this coming from? The bed of my hand. Anyway, I really like the shape of this. I like the length of this, and I like where it ends. If you have similar issues, then you can go to the dollar store and get a pencil grip, which, you know, doesn't cost much at all. And it's those little foamy things that people put on the ends of their pencil or pen to help them grip it and give them a little cushion. And you can stick that on the end of your, you know, $2 crochet hook from Walmart, and it does the same thing. I've done that many a time. It provides a lot of cushion and support, and I really like the way that feels. So I'm a big fan of doing that and getting a crochet hook and a little cushion for the end for a total of like $5. And I love that. This was a little special indulgence that I got. I've only got it in one size, but I love my crochet hooks from Walmart. That's what I use all the time normally. I need to get started on my crochet squares. I'm going to do different colors and switch up the order of the colors. I want a nice, you know, mix and match homemade look here. So every square is going to be different, you know, to a point. There's only so many different combinations I can do with 25 squares. But I will get started on that. All right, and we're off. Good morning, y'all. It is quite a few days later and I have some exciting news. So I have finished crocheting all of my 25 granny squares. And I did go ahead and whip stitch them together in the rows. So I've got my rows of granny squares whip stitched together. And there's different ways that you can join granny squares, but I decided to do that method with a needle, and I actually use my tail yarn from each square to join them together, and then I just kind of weave that strand of yarn in as I go. So once you do that, it depends on what size that you're making. I have not woven in the other ends, as you can see. It's going to be a job. But anyway, once you whip stitch them together lengthwise, before you join them together this way now, depending on what size you're making, you actually go in and add a certain number of rows to the side with your main color to make the width. It's time for me to join my vest together. So I've got all of my different strips of crochet granny squares, and now I'm going to actually whip stitch them together so I'll have the vest shape, and then I will be moving on to the knitting part. But first, I've got my tapestry needle out, and I've got a strip of yarn, and I'm ready to start sewing.
Fight the darkness till break of day. The heart and the past changes so fast, like a chameleon. Red ones and blue skies. So very young.
I'm so excited because I am sitting here wearing a finished Agnes sweater vest. Yay! So this is a really fun project. I did feel like my hands and wrists and arms got a little bit sore from the crochet. I probably am not doing it correctly. It's not really my forte. I would not be surprised if that's the reason that it was exacerbating my carpal tunnel pain. But overall, this was such a fun project. I love the yarn that I got to use. I think Biches, buches, lambswool, and Le Petit lambswool is one of my all-time favorites. It's a little bit rustic, it's very woolen, and it's very sheepy, and for all those reasons, I think it's lovely to knit with. I also don't personally find it itchy. I think that if I was a little bit hot and sweaty and trying to wear an all-over wool sweater in it next to skin, it might be a little bit, but overall I find it very pleasant. I also made a junction sweater by Andrea Mowry out of the Le Petit lambswool, and I enjoy wearing it as well. I like that rustic woolen feel, and I think that even though this has that, it's not extra prickly, it's still just very pleasant. That being said, if you are very sensitive to that woolly feel, then this might be itchy for you, so I would keep that in mind. If possible, I would try to feel it in a yarn store before purchasing it, or maybe just getting one ball, or even you can get on Ravelry, and sometimes they'll have destashes of partial skeins. That is even a great way to try out a yarn before you purchase a large quantity of it. So like I said, I did end up going down a crochet hook size and a needle size. So for my crochet granny squares, I used a 4mm hook, and then for my ribbing everywhere, I used a 4mm US 6 needle. I also did tubular bind offs for all of my ribbing, and one thing I will mention is that I needed to actually pick up almost 20 stitches less than the pattern called for my armholes. Otherwise, it tends to be flaring a lot. And with the tubular bind off, which is pretty stretchy, it was just way too much flaring. And I feel like it still is a little bit, but not to the point that I don't like it or wouldn't wear it. I think that even though these are a lot of colors, they're still very neutral, and I think the palette is great for fall, winter, or spring. I think it's going to carry me through all of those seasons. And I think you can't go wrong with a black and white gingham. That just matches everything in my opinion. And so I really like it over my hinterland dress in this Merchant & Mills black and white gingham. I think it's really fun. Ignore the fact that I just ripped this a few minutes ago, and I was taking pictures with this before I put it on, and I realized that it was ripped and you could see it. Okay, weaving in the ends was quite a chore, one that I did not enjoy. I'm so glad that's over, I will not lie. But I'm so pleased to have this now. Bethany Lynn, who is the designer of this, used Wool of the Andes from Knit Picks. I think that's a great yarn choice. There's so many worsted weight yarns. I think there's a lot of fingering yarns that you could hold double, and of course some heavy DK yarns I think will work as well. Also in the granny squares, I think you would have no problem mix and matching fingering held double, worsted, or DK weight all in the same granny square. I would just watch my finished measurements, and if you need to, you could always block your square out a little bit bigger. I ended up not blocking each individual square. Instead, I blocked the entire thing after I was finished, and that worked out pretty well for me. I feel like this came together fairly quickly, and I'm really glad that I jumped out of my comfort zone to make something super fun like this, and I definitely want to make the Ariana cardigan now. All in all, my thoughts are this was a great pattern. I think Bethany did a very nice job of making it clear and easy to understand. If you purchase this pattern, which is going to be coming out in, I think, end of October, early November of this year, 2024, she also has a full tutorial for the single size on her website, and there's videos that you can look up for more techniques, and I think you'll be totally fine with learning how to do all of the different things needed for this. I do personally feel like I needed to pick up less stitches for the ribbing on my collar and on my armholes. Not for my bottom hem, that number actually worked out perfectly, but because I needed it to cinch in a bit, I did pick up 19 or 20 stitches less on my underarms. I probably could have picked up a few more stitches and done a tighter bind off, but I wanted to keep the bind off consistent on all of my hems, and because of that, in the end, I felt like it was the best choice to pick up fewer stitches. So that's the only comment I have to make about changes I made. Otherwise, I've knit this and crocheted this completely to pattern. Oh, I'm sorry, that's not true. I did make one other change. Bethany has instructions for you to do a split hem, and I wanted to do a enclosed hem fully in the round, and so I did do that with permission, and I'm very pleased with how that turned out. I think that a split hem would be nice as well, but because of where I wanted this to hit me, I wanted it to cinch a little bit and I didn't want it to flare too much. I think that depending on what you're going to be wearing it with, the length that it is going to hit you at, and some of those different considerations might come into play whenever you decide to either do a split hem or a connected hem. If you did a split hem, I think it would also be cute if you wanted to do a longer hem in the back than in the front. You have a lot of different options to play with. But that, my friends, is my finished Agnes sweater vest. Thank y'all so much for hanging out with me while I made this project. If you enjoy project videos like this, let me know, because I kind of like to switch things up. I really like to do at least one podcast episode every month. I like to do a newly released patterns video every month, and then maybe a roundup video, but also possibly a project video, start to finish, another week. So if you enjoy this, let me know and I'll keep adding more project journal videos. Thank you again, Skillshare, for sponsoring today's video. Make sure and give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button if you don't want to miss out on any future video content. And until next time, have a wonderful week of making, and happy knitting, y'all.